Hey, welcome back to the House of Trauma podcast. It's me, your favorite podcast host, Kiana Brienne. Now let's get into it. Before we get started, don't forget to email me any and all advice questions that you may have pertaining to anything about self-love, healing, spirituality, trauma. You can email those to hausoftrauma@gmail.com. Remember, this is 100% anonymous, and I would love to continue to hear from you all, whether you are submitting an advice question at hausoftrauma@gmail.com or via my DMs, House of Trauma Podcast on Instagram. There is no question that is off the table, and I promise to do my best to give you an honest, unbiased answer. And feedback is always welcome, so you can DM me feedback. You can email me feedback as well. Remember, this is a judgment-free community, and we are all on this self-love healing journey together. Now let's really get into it. Okay, so I was recently having a conversation with one of my sisters, and we talk about everything all the time. I really do it with most of my sisters, but this sister in particular, like, we get into the nitty-gritty on all things. And she called me out on something, and while I didn't appreciate it, she was absolutely right, and I let her know she was right. I have not been 100% honest with myself. And don't that hurt the most when you're not honest with yourself, and you realize you have not been honest with yourself, and then you can choose to go one of two ways. You can either choose to continue to live in delusion. Don't we all love to live in delusion? Okay, maybe not us all, but you can continue to live in delusion, or you can start being real with yourself. And me, I like to keep it at that wow with y'all, so I need to do the same for myself, and that's a part of loving yourself, being honest with yourself, and doing things that will continue to add to you, add value, add love, add positivity, and I'm doing myself a disservice by being dishonest. So you may wonder exactly what it is that I have been dishonest with myself about. I have been neglecting my healing journey. Yeah, I know. The audacity, right? The audacity for me to get on here every week and encourage you to, take steps towards your healing journey, and to be neglecting mine. Now, I haven't always neglected it. Obviously, I started this healing journey over 3 years ago, but I've come to the realization that somewhere down the line, I can't pinpoint exactly where, I stopped doing the work. And I mean the really hard work, the ugly part of healing that people don't like to talk about. And it can be overwhelming. It's a little overwhelming to even talk about this right now, but bear with me. I'm going to do the best I can to fully express what it is that I'm trying to say and what it is that I'm going to do to turn that around. So, I've been neglecting the ugly parts of healing. So let me just back it up a bit. Basically, when I first started my healing journey, like, I was all in, like I was neck deep in everything that it meant to heal. I was doing all of the shadow work. I was, rebuilding my relationship with God. I was tapped into my spirituality. I was becoming open and vulnerable, and I was facing all those ugly, dark sides of my past. And again, somewhere along the lines, I stopped really facing them. So I seen something a couple weeks ago, could have been on Instagram, could have been on TikTok or whatever. And a woman said, "Are you really healed, or have you removed everybody from your life that triggers you?" I'm going to ask that question again. Are you really healed, or have you just removed everyone and everything from your life that triggers you? And it got me thinking, damn, did I just start removing people and things that could potentially trigger me instead of figuring out why I was triggered? So I think in both the Three's a Crowd episode and the Boundaries episode, I've discussed, different relationships and friendships, that I've had in the past where I feel like I had to, cut people off, let them go because they, and even in the Triggers episode, I feel like those 3 episodes kind of go hand in hand. So if you haven't listened to Three's a Crowd, Boundaries, and Triggers, I'll be referencing those, sometimes throughout this episode. So just for more context, go ahead and listen to those episodes. Anyways, speaking specifically on like past friendships or, past relationships, I will absolutely remove you from my life if I feel like, there's a boundary that has been crossed. If I feel like you're being disloyal, if I feel like you're being dishonest, or you just flat out not a good friend. And I'm not wrong for that. So don't ever think you're wrong for removing people for your life who are not adding value. That part was not wrong. What was wrong is not letting people know exactly where they had me fucked up, exactly what boundary they crossed, and exactly why I'm removing them from my space. And as I've said before, every relationship, every friendship, every companionship doesn't always deserve, a sit down talk and an explanation. But sometimes you do need to let people know exactly where they had you fucked up. And sometimes I neglect having those conversations because I just feel like people know. And so if you know better, you should do better. And they know better, but they don't do better. So in order to keep my peace of mind, I'm just going to move you around. So I think the point that I'm trying to make here is I've been triggered a lot. People have crossed boundaries a lot. People have not been the most loyal to my standards. And instead of dealing with, whatever issues lie deep within me, I just decide to not deal with it. Are y'all following me? Okay, I'm trying to think how I can further put this just to really get my point across before I continue. Sometimes unhealed versions of you show up in ways that you don't even realize that unhealed version of you is showing up. And sometimes it's still a work to be done inside of you, which is why you handle situations in a certain manner that maybe the healed version of you wouldn't handle. So what I'm realizing about me personally is maybe I don't have the best communication style. So that's why Queen of Detachment over here, right? I don't have the best communication style because of the truth is when I was growing up, it wasn't as welcoming, or I didn't feel safe communicating how I truly felt, right? So these old wounds are eating at me from the inside out. And because I'm not dealing with them or even realizing that it's something that I need to deal with, it's affecting how I communicate and deal with relationships right now in the present. So I was listening to another podcast the other day, and I can't remember the name exactly, but one thing that she said on there is, you're dealing with it whether you choose to or not. You're dealing with it whether you choose to or not. So whether you push something to the back of your mind and you choose not to actively deal with it, subconsciously you're going to deal with it. And again, it's going to show up in ways that are less than desirable for you. And it could take months, years, decades for you to even realize that, this is something that's affecting you negatively. And so, again, I must express this somewhere along the lines. I stopped doing the deep shadow work. And I'm realizing that my failure to continue to do the hard work is, it's not helping me progress at all. And this isn't about, friendships, really. That's not what I want to discuss today, but I wanted to make that a point as a realization. And again, to my sister's point, I'm really neglecting doing the work necessary at this point in time. And I vow to stop that right now. I vow to stop that today. I need to start doing all the ugly parts of healing that produces all the beautiful outcomes in reality. So I've been on a journey inside of a journey. And this journey in particular, I've been dating myself. I talked in an Unequally Yoked episode on how, dating in Dallas left me traumatized, and it did. It really did. But then you have to ask yourself, how does one attract so much trash, right? And don't get me wrong. This is a known fact that dating in Dallas is trash. Like, I'm sorry. Dating in the world right now in 2023 is going to have its challenges within itself. But it's not impossible. And with the help of God, with God at the forefront, it is more possible than you can even imagine. But the point I'm trying to make is I talk a great deal about wanting to be a wife and wanting to be a mother in that order. And in order to achieve that, I have to put myself out there. And I have neglected putting myself out there without even realizing that I'm not putting myself out there, not because it's just so trash. It is trash, but that's not the reason why I'm not putting myself out there. I'm not putting myself out there because the truth of the matter is I have not been open to a relationship, a real relationship, in a really long time. I've come across, some men who had potential. Were they my soulmate? No, because they'd be with me right now, right? But still, I have not truly put myself out there. And I realized this when this guy was DMing me and we were talking, we exchanged words for a while. And then he wanted my number and he wanted to go on a date. And at first I was open to it. And then I made an excuse. I'm not even going to say what the excuse was. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm going to tell y'all. I was like, oh, I can't, what if he tries to kidnap me? But for real though, this is actually real fear of mine, is being kidnapped and sold into the sex trade. That's something I just will not do. It's a crazy world out here. Sex trafficking is at an all-time high. However, what are the odds that this man was trying to take me on a date to fucking kidnap me? You know what I mean? So that was really just my excuse to cut it off right then and there. This could be a great guy, not necessarily my husband, but still I feel like it's important to put yourself out there and date and figure out what you like and what you don't like, and just to, be exposed to different dates and different men. I think that that's important within dating, but this isn't about dating advice or how I think you should date. The fact of the matter is I have been making excuses for the reasons why I refuse to date. And people ask me all the time, oh, are you dating? Is there a guy in your life? Or what's going on? And I get annoyed. And at first, I was getting annoyed because I'm okay, because I'm a 29-year-old single female, I have to be dating somebody all the time. I'm why are people always asking me this? My little sister, I was only 15 years old. She like made a reference a while back about how I'm like always in the house. And I'm just like, because I like my bed. And I do like my bed. And I do like to be in the comfort of my own home. But I wasn't telling the complete truth. And I do want to give a disclaimer that I think it's important for me to really build my relationship with God more before I can potentially, consider anybody for marriage, right? However, the reason I get so annoyed and people are always asking me about dating, people are like wanting me to date and like doing all these things, is because it's not something I really wanted. It is, but it's not. Because if I'm being 100% honest, and I want to be 100% honest with y'all, I thought that this didn't affect me anymore. But in recent weeks, I've realized that my last relationship really did a number on me mentally and emotionally. And I think it's been so hard to really admit that to myself because of my pride, and to admit that this person really tore my heart to pieces in such a way that over 3 years later, I'm still in pain. And it's preventing me from opening up my heart again to allow someone else in because of how much pain I endured. And to admit that, I felt like it was admitting that he succeeded in tearing my heart apart. So I talked about my last ex briefly in the episode Thank You Next, and more in depth in the episode Scared to Love Again. But I think what's super important that I didn't admit is that I was truly crushed by that relationship. And I remember when I was in the thick of it, and we were arguing, and I was just tired, of arguing, of going back and forth. And I remember he looked at me and he's like, you're almost heartless. And he's like, I wish I could be like you and just have no emotion. And that was false. I have emotion. I had a lot of emotions, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of thinking that he broke me, even though he did. I refused to cry in front of a man who didn't care if I cried. You know what I mean? So I'm like, well, you just want me to sit here and cry and beg and plead you to do right, and you will never get that from me. And the thing about me is I do a really good job of bottling my emotions up inside, and that's a scary trait to have. And I used to think it was kind of a pro. I used to think it was, almost like a badge of honor to, especially as a Cancer, you know what I mean? To not be so emotional and to be able to hide my feelings and to be able to detach from things easily. And it's not. And it's almost ruining my potential at what I really want in this life. Love and happiness, to be a wife and mother. Just to paint a picture, I don't know if anybody knows what it's like to think at one moment you're going to spend the rest of your life with somebody and to have them just do you so cold. And it's crazy because I didn't want to be with this person. I didn't. It took a whole year of convincing, consistency, gifts, admiration, love bombing in order for me to even consider giving this person a chance. And the fact that I did, and the relationship did a complete 180, I was in a state of shock and disbelief. And then to make matters worse, he proposed to me, and I feel like right after that proposal, shit went left, like all the way left. Like I had never in my life endured such a toxic relationship. And I used to tell him all the time, like, this shit is toxic and I'm really not with it. Like, I'm really not with it. And I think because I believe in love so much, I wanted it to work, because it's not every day that you think you're going to marry somebody, All my family knew, all my friends knew I was planning what was supposed to be the wedding of my dreams. And it's not that I believe that I'll never get married again, but it's hard. It's almost like PTSD. Every time I get so far with a guy, I intentionally sabotage it. And this is what I know now. Because when I thought that I was going to have it all, I felt like it was ripped away from me. And while it was 100% my decision to walk away from this relationship, it didn't come easy. The decision was not easy. And clearly I'm still dealing with the aftermath of that decision. And I have no regrets. I have zero regrets for the decision I made, because I chose me. I chose my happiness over everything. I felt like I was at a really dark place in my life, and the relationship had become so dark. And I remember crying one day in the bathroom, and I wiped my eyes, and I just happened to look up in the mirror, and I asked myself, is this what you want to deal with every day for the rest of your life? And the answer was no. And I knew then what I had to do, which was walk away. And I feel like I did everything that I could to make the relationship work. I gave it my all, and in the midst, in the midst of everything going horribly wrong within the relationship, my dad died, right? We already know this. And I felt like the person who claimed they wanted to be my husband and wanted to be there for me, with me for the rest of my life, and he just wasn't there. And I don't want to cry, but I also think it's important to do so. It's important to feel emotions deeply, and I've spent the last 3 years not feeling these emotions deeply. But anyway, I lost my father, and he had lost his father before, a few years prior. And so to not be there for me at to date, the worst time in my life, I couldn't believe it. I was already dealing with so much pain, and he was adding to my pain. And he knew he was lying. He knew he was not being honest. He knew he wasn't being present. And that really fucked me up. And I've never told anybody this. So if you're listening, you are hearing this for the first time. I've never even really had this conversation with myself. And yeah, it was just a horrific time in my life. And my dad died in January 2019. And by October of that same year, I knew I was done. mentally, I had left the relationship in August, and I let him know mentally I'm not even here. I'm here physically. He's like, well, what the fuck does that mean? It means exactly what was said. Mentally, I've already left the building. And by October, so what was actually the final straw, because we lived together, and I told him he had to leave. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I told him it's time to go. I was going to say I didn't tell him, I made him, but no, I told him it was time to go. And one morning I woke up, and I looked to my right, and he wasn't there. And it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. I think I had to be to work at like 9. And I texted him like, what's tea? And he sent me some bullshit that I knew was a lie, major manipulator. He was a major manipulator. Didn't realize I was the queen of manipulation. And you can't really pull the wool over my eyes, because I might not know for a fact, but my spirit will let me know when something is off. So anyway, I knew it was bullshit. And so before I went to work, I packed all of his stuff. I moved it into the garage. I let him know to leave my fucking key on the counter, and please do not be in my home when I get back. So I think he thought I was playing. And when he got back and all his stuff really was in the garage, he wants to call me and argue with me. I'm at work, please. And when I got home, he wasn't there. But, that's exactly what I needed to get him out of my space to fully commit to leaving. And I did. No. He moved out in August. And October was the final straw. My bad, I got my timeline a little messed up. And how I know October was actually the final straw that year was because we had already planned a trip to go to Los Angeles. And I remember I didn't want to go. I actually told him not to come with me, but he showed up that morning anyway, and we went on the trip. And I just remember thinking the whole time we was on the trip, I cannot wait to get back to Milwaukee so I can be fucking done. Like, I don't ever want to see this man again in my motherfucking life. And I don't feel bad about it. What Beyonce say? That's exactly what you get. Stop interrupting my grinding. Okay, he was interrupting my grinding. And yeah, I was as good as done. And it was some other thing just transpired after that, but this ain't about that. The point I'm trying to make is it was just an ugly time. So imagine 8 months after losing my dad, I'm walking away from my relationship because this man was a monster, okay, in a number of ways. And I always tell people, he was a liar. Like, he was habitual. He was compulsive. He was a compulsive liar, and it was unnecessary. At one point I thought we were really trying to work on our relationship. I thought we were really going to work through it. And again, I thought we were going to be married. And again, I'm trying to fight for this marriage that hasn't even come to pass yet, and not realizing that the whole time God is so desperately trying to pull me away from this man. And I am fighting so hard. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And it took me to, after leaving him, to getting right with God, to realize, oh my God, God, you've been with me this whole time. And this is why I love God so much. Because even when you are not actively pursuing God, God is actively pursuing you. God always had my back. But I was too blind to see because I had my own motives and I had my own intentions. And that wasn't the only time in my life that I wanted something to work so bad. And God's like, why would you want this to work when I have something better for you? And not only did I hang on to a relationship for years that God did not want for me, I'm still holding on to that pain. That if I would have listened to God, if I would have trusted my spirit, if I would have trusted the Holy Spirit deep down inside of me, not my spirit, if I would have trusted the Holy Spirit when I didn't want this man for a whole year and I knew something wasn't right. But I went against my better judgment And I learned a really hard lesson. And I'm still learning that lesson today. I'm still fighting to get that piece of me back that I lost within that relationship. There was a part of me that always knew I was settling. There was always a voice in the back of my head saying, what if? What if he's not the one? What if this doesn't work? What if you aren't going to be happy? Just voices in the back of my head. But again, I had my own ideas and my own motives, and I desperately wanted something to work for me. And again, because I didn't listen to God, I feel like I had to make it hurt. And that really is a big problem of mine. God will be desperately trying to get me to see the bigger picture in something and to let something go. But because this is all I can see in front of me, and because I don't know what's coming after it, okay, can I get an amen? Because I know I'm not the only one. I'm focused on what's in front of me because it's working for me now, or so I thought. I was trying to make it work for me. And because God wasn't giving me, the preview, I was refusing to let go. And what I know now is that my husband is out there and he's waiting for me to do the work, to fully heal, to fully be open, to fully commit to God, to fully accept what has transpired in my past. Because just a minute ago, I'm in tears. I was going to say practically in tears. No, quite literally in tears. Because I'm admitting things out loud that I refused to admit out loud for years. And it hurts. I would be lying if I said it didn't hurt. It does. To admit that you gave somebody a part of you and they threw it away. They didn't appreciate it. And just to backtrack a little bit, like I said, I was really trying hard to work on this relationship, right? So at one point we were going to therapy, couples therapy. And I thought that was important. Well, my dad had already suggested one thing that he wished he had done before he was married was couples counseling. And so he thought that would be, something to consider before we were married, especially since we were getting married so young. And at first, I didn't consider it that much. But when I realized, okay, we were really having problems, I definitely considered it. And we also had two different type of communication styles. So I like to sit things down and talk it out. And I want to talk it out, within my relationships and talk it out. And until we, get everything settled, because I don't want to have to revisit this conversation. I don't want us to be like, oh, we talked for a little bit and then later on bringing it up again. You know what I mean? No, I don't like to dwell on the past as it pertains to relationships, because I feel like that's one of the fastest way to end them, right? And so he would sit down when it was time to talk, and all of a sudden you ain't got shit to say. You at a loss for words. You can't express yourself. So, hey, you can't express yourself. Let's try to get a mediator in here, so I can see your side and you can see my side. What type of monster goes to therapy and lies to the motherfucking therapist? And I didn't realize he was lying right away. But I did realize that he was just saying what he felt like I wanted to hear and what she wanted to hear. And then he was upset because the therapist we had was a woman. So he felt like she was only going to take my side, which was not true. And I remember at one point, me and the therapist were sitting there and we everything is not your fault. And we're not here to say everything is your fault. And I think he really was like, okay, I'm going to just get in here and be like, yep, it's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm going to do better. And that was just going to make everything better. But, not to go too in depth on, the therapy sessions and the conversations that we had, but it had to be the third or fourth time. I'm like, this nigga really just be lying. Like, I already knew you was a liar. I'm like, but lying in therapy when one of the reasons we hear is because you a motherfucking lie. Like, that is just a level of psycho, like I was going to say psychocism. That's not even a real word. I just made that up, but it's so fitting. Like, psychotic for you to, again, try to manipulate. You were trying to manipulate the situation. And it's really disgusting. And it just showed the type of person that he really was. But he didn't try to just manipulate me and the therapist. He tried to manipulate everybody around me, my family, my friends. It was always like, woe is me, boo hoo hoo. I'm the victim. I just love her so much. And I think that where I did myself a disservice, especially after the relationship was terminated, I wasn't honest with my family and friends on all the details as to why we no longer were. And again, it stems back to me not being vulnerable. I didn't want to be that vulnerable with my family. I just like to keep it short and sweet. He was a liar. We weren't meant for each other. I don't like this man. That's it. We done. It is what it is. But it was a disservice for me because nobody truly knew, or even still knows to this day, all that I had to endure within the confines of that relationship, emotionally and other ways. And so, yeah, I think I did myself a disservice because the truth is only me, him, and God knows what truly went on behind closed doors. But one thing I did mention in Scared to Love Again episode is he was such a liar who stood 10 toes down on his lies that I didn't know how far the lies would go. I felt like that he would tell lies on top of lies on top of lies just to cover his lies. And it became almost scary to a point because you could lie without blinking. He could look you dead in your eye and lie and believe the lie that he told. It was truly disgusting. And within any relationship that I have, the number one rule is honesty. I think that that's so important. So if I'm going to keep it real with you, but you can't keep it real with me, that's not a relationship, a friendship, or anything like that I'm willing to continue to hold. Like, how can you spend your life with someone or expect someone to spend their life with you when who are you? Who is the real you? Because everything out your mouth is a lie. It was overwhelming. It was becoming too much. And I remember, in the thick of it, in the deep darkness of it all, when we would argue all the time, and I would tell him, like, you're going to look up one day. I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be here, and you're going to wish you did better by me. And one day he was walking up the stairs, and he turned back around and was like, you keep saying that shit, and I'm tired of you threatening me. I was like, oh, no, it's not a threat. It's a promise. And I made good on that promise. Yet almost 4 years later, he's still trying to come back. He's still reaching out to me, reaching out to my mom, thinking that there's somehow some strange twist of fate that an opportunity is going to come along where we're going to be able to work this out. And I've already made it perfectly clear that we are done. And there is no rekindling that. So there is no part of me that's hurting because I want this man back. Let's just be perfectly clear on that. But something in this psychotic mind makes him think that he still stands a chance. And I used to get so annoyed and so irritated when he would come out of nowhere, whether it's a DM or him like watching my story or trying to text my mom and, all this stuff. But now I wonder, maybe he keeps resurfacing because the universe is trying to tell me that this problem has not been dealt with. You know what I mean? When you think you've dealt with a situation, but it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. It's like a revolving door. It's because you haven't truly dealt with the situation. And, you know, that's not to say that me expressing myself right here today with you all, that's going to immediately turn on a button that's going to stop him from reaching out. But, you know, God willing, it will. I remember after I moved to Texas a few months later, and we had already been broken up for months. You know what I mean? A few months later, he moves to Texas as well. And a crazy attempt to win me back. And I'm like, you still not hearing me. You know what I mean? Like you're not hearing me. And let me just give one more example. Another major issue that we had was I felt like everything and everybody was more important than us, than our relationship, but mostly more important than me. And, I got a problem with that. You know, I got a problem with not being at the forefront of your priorities. And so, the money that should have been being spent on the wedding was being spent on other things. We were supposed to make the second payment on our venue, and he bought a brand new car. It's not to say he didn't deserve a brand new car, but that money was specifically designated to the wedding, and you chose to do something else with it, right? So fast forward, I moved to Texas, and I remember he called me one day, and he's just like, if I finish paying for the wedding, like right now, if I finish paying for the wedding, will you take me back? Huh? I literally told him, like, that's what you think this is about? You think I broke up with you, called off this wedding, moved across the country because you didn't finish paying for the wedding? That was an issue, quite obviously, but I'm like, you're not hearing me. You've heard literally nothing I said, and it just further proves my point that I made the right decision. Like, absolutely not. Be so fucking for real. It was literally exhausting to have conversations with him. And so I finally just had to cut off all communication. So now he tries to get to me through other people in my life. But in true fashion, I never lose. I only learn lessons. And I learned a valuable lesson after walking away from that relationship. Not to settle. Number one, I expect more now, and I don't ignore my gut feeling. I don't ignore the Holy Spirit whispering inside of me, telling me, you know, not to do something. Even relationships I'm not 110% open to, because I haven't been 100% open to any relationship. I still seek God's guidance first before taking it too far. And this was not something I openly practiced. This was not an expectation, because if it was, had I consulted with God, this wouldn't even be a part of my trauma. To all my beautiful, amazing ladies out there, I encourage you to choose you and not settle for somebody who's just good enough. And definitely don't settle to be somebody else's good enough. Trust that when somebody shows you who they are the first time, there is nothing you or anybody else can do to change them from being who they are at their core. My ex-fiance was a fraud. We were together for almost 3 years. And I can't say that I really know or really knew who he was. What I can say is that I know that last relationship really took a toll on my heart. And it has affected every relationship or attempted relationship that I've had with a man moving forward. But the good news is that this is not the end. This conversation